What's up, sons? It's Blind Red with Son of a Tech once again, and today I have the updated hash rates for the Intel Arc A750 GPU. And this is important because, of course, there hasn't been a ton of support on the miner side for this particular GPU. But we just had a recent update for SRB miner, which includes a few new algorithms from, of course, Alephium and Caspa, for example, as well as Novo. And then on the LOL miner side, a couple weeks ago, we had support added on the Intel Arc GPUs for Ergo and Ethereum, as well as Flux. So we have a few things to go ahead and take a look at here and get you guys the updated hash rates. Let's get into it right now. So first things first, we set up the test bench in a manner that allows us to test the power for the card specifically by running a separate power supply, jumping the 24 pin and plugging that in through a kilowatt. Your mileage will vary, of course, depending on the amount of voltage and all that sort of stuff, efficiency of the power supply too. In this particular case, it's a gold rated power supply and it is running on a 120 volt circuit. Of course, to get even better efficiency here, you can opt to utilize a 240 volt circuit and a platinum rated power supply. These are the kinds of things when building out a farm that you want to pay attention to. So this would be what I would consider a home miner setup, or worst case scenario if you're just building with gold rated power supplies and running on a 120 volt circuit. We also calculated the power out here to the new updated power rate of 13 cents a kilowatt hour, going up 30% from that 10 cents a kilowatt hour, because I believe that is more indicative of what the actual electricity costs look like now on average. So I want to make sure that we're sitting in there. That being said, of course, with GPU mining right now, not a lot is profitable. So this is really preparing you for the future and not specifically for right now. I gotta say the A750 is looking extremely promising on the memory algorithm dedicated side of things. The A770 will probably perform better on things like Alephium and Radiant and of course Caspa, but those coins are also going to be moving into FPGA and ASIC realms, so it's probably not anything from a GPU miner perspective that you really want to focus on too heavily. Let's go ahead and hop into the numbers though. On Alephium, we got 1.53 gigahash a second, and that was at 209 watts. A majority of these core intensive algorithms are going to be at 209 watts. We cannot tune them down. We can only tune them up with the current overclocking capabilities of the Arc software. We also have no capabilities of tuning down the memory in these particular situations. However, I am trying to figure out if we can figure out a specific setting where we could overclock within the software itself and tune down the memory settings, because that would help with the power efficiency on these core heavy algorithms. Moving on from there, we have Beam, which is once again ticking up 209 watts. This is at a hash rate of 26.3 solutions a second. And then we finally get into what I would call the most impressive use case for the Intel Arc A750 in the current market and probably moving forward, and that is going to be with Ergo. And with Ergo, there were some extremely surprising results. While in the software of the Arc control panel, there was a high reading or a higher reading of power consumption, at the actual kilowatt, we had very low power consumption once we tuned it in. And the way we went ahead and tuned it in was just dragging down the core slider all the way and dragging down the power slider all the way. This got us the most efficient. While it does drop the hash rate below what the potential max hash rate is, the actual watt or per hash, right, or hash per watt is extremely high here. On Ergo, we got 112.5 megahash a second at 67 watts. That means in the current landscape, that is the most efficient GPU on Ergo I have ever tested. Now, I haven't been updated on the 4000 series or 7000 series yet, so keep that in mind. But this is looking extremely promising, especially once we start getting proper overclocking tools for the Intel Arc series, where we could potentially overclock the memory and really dial in the core clock a little bit further down. This could end up being hands down the best Ergo, most efficient Ergo GPU you could purchase by far. That being said, it does look very good on ET hash as well. If you go ahead and drag those sliders down, remember our first tests were showing around 50 mega hash a second at 90 to 100 watts. But what we're seeing now is with this capability of bringing that power consumption all the way down on the Arc software, we get the most efficiency at 67 watts once again with a hash rate of 38.57 mega hash a second. And that does make it extremely efficient on ET hash as well, but not as efficient as the competitive ASICs. So really the sweet spot here appears to be Ergo. We have a few kind of ancillary projects here that we'll go over the hash rates for you on, but it's not very impressive, right? Flux is sitting at 31.8 solutions a second at 209 watts, kind of meh. And then on Caspa, we're sitting at 385 mega hash a second at 209 watts. This is using SRB miner, and that is important to note because LOL miner for Caspa right now is really, really poor performing on the Intel Arc series. It's down in the 250 to 280 range. So you get a ton of extra hash rate just moving over to the proper miner. So keep that in mind. We'll have the links to the miners down below as well. Then we had Radiant, the RXD, at 544 mega hash a second at once again 209 watts. In addition to that, there is Novo capability now for mining, and that was at basically 2 gigahash a second at 209 watts. If we look at the mining calculators, I'm using hashrate.no because it essentially has more capabilities than what to mine at this time. What to mine doesn't have all the algorithms kind of listed here out nicely, so I enjoy this a lot. We have the 13 cents a kilowatt hour here put into the power cost, and you can see here we have all the numbers laid out. We're negative on everything, but if you take a look here, this Ergo number is looking pretty good. We're only losing 2 cents a day at 13 cents a kilowatt hour, and that is the best I've seen Ergo look from a mining perspective in quite some time. This is relevant because we aren't seeing a relative pump in Ergo to the rest of the market, meaning that Ergo is really kind of still sitting around that same price point, even though the rest of the market has come up. And being able to have an extremely efficient GPU to be able to mine Ergo could obviously queue for a competitive advantage over the rest of the Ergo mining market. So I think that's important to point out. The rest of these, though, we're losing 30 cents a day on Alephium. We're losing 46 cents a day on Beam. We're losing 9 cents a day on Ethereum and Ethereum Proof of Work, or Ethereum Classic and Ethereum Proof of Work, excuse me. We're losing 54 cents a day on Flux, and we're losing 45 cents a day on Caspa, and we're losing 47 cents a day on Radiant. Now, hashrate.no doesn't have a Novo calculator yet, but we do have one over at MinerStat. So I pulled that up at 13 cents a kilowatt hour with the 209 watts and 2 gigahash, and it is losing 18 cents a day on Novo. So these are all the hash rates and what we're looking at as far as profitability goes. I am pretty bullish on the Intel Arc A750 for mining. If we get proper overclocking tools, I think it could be profitable today as it sits on Ergo, and that would be pretty incredible. What do I mean by proper overclocking tools? Something that allows us to overclock the memory and, of course, pull down that voltage on the core. If we can start getting those kind of capabilities on these GPUs, it's going to be amazing. The other thing about this GPU in particular is that the price point is coming in extremely low. Intel recently just brought the price of the Intel Arc A750 down to $250. In Japan right now, there were even bulk sales of it going on for $199, which is simply insane for the amount of performance that you're getting out of this GPU. And as you can see right now in the US, you can go straight to B&H Photo as well as to Newegg and basically purchase this for $249.99, making it by far the best deal off the shelf as far as a brand new GPU goes for mining Ergo specifically. So if you're hot on Ergo and that's really what you're looking at mining in the near term or even into the future, you may want to take a look at the Intel Arc A750 for building out your mining rigs. Recently, Ubuntu did update the driver capability, so there is drivers for the Intel Arc A750, and I will be going over, of course, setting that up and seeing how the miners work on the Ubuntu side of things, and then hopefully what we end up seeing is a push on the mining OS side of things with Hive OS, rolling these drivers into their packages and starting to support the A750 in things like Hive OS. Thanks everybody for watching. Once again, I think this is the best GPU for mining Ergo with the most future potential with overclocking availability. Please hit the like, comment, subscribe down below, and I will see you next Tuesday.